Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Alan with another broadcast of the Morlog Morning Digest. Please be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Most importantly, I ask that you share the content, as well as check out the links in the description below to my backup channel, as well as a couple options for donations. I had a subscriber a while ago ask me to talk about Bigfoot, but I want to take this one step further and address interdimensional beings in a whole. In order for me to do that, I need to expound upon on some other theories that we have talked about on this channel involving player characters, i.e. you and I, right? And the non-player characters that we live amongst. And in order for me to explain how interdimensional beings play into that, I first have to explain how I believe our consciousness interfaces with this simulation. Anybody that's watched me for a while understands I don't believe that we come from this reality. And in fact, this reality is digital, all right? Now, if that is the case, our bodies are an avatar for our consciousness. I've expounded upon this in my thinking, and I've only left myself with one logical conclusion. If we are in fact inhabiting an avatar, our consciousness more than likely exists outside of this reality, alright? And if that is the case, why are we here? That is the big question. Now, the only thing that I've left myself as a plausible reason for this is that we are responsible for this reality, for this simulation. Whether we created it or we were left in charge of it, I can't tell you that. All I can tell you is inherently I feel a responsibility for this reality. And in turn, I think we consciously chose, in the reality our consciousness exists in its organic form, right? To come into this simulation in order to correct a problem with it. Now, through one reason or another, we had to go through a memory wipe to make this happen. All right. That's how I believe we came to exist inside of this simulation. What we're here for, that doesn't matter for this topic of discussion. We'll get into that another time. Now, there is an antithesis to us inside of this simulation. Like I said, we are inhabiting avatars, alright? Now, there are non-player characters. I've gone over this as well. They are the avatars around us, the human meat sack machines that are not inhabited by an external consciousness, alright? And this is a rather recent revelation for me, so let me make it more clear. They do have a consciousness, okay? But it does not have a soul, and it is not human, all right? Or what we would consider human. I would consider a human somebody who has an external consciousness that chose to come into this simulation. All right? It's very important that you understand that for later on in the conversation. These NPCs, rather, are a representation of the system itself. Now, what I believe went wrong with this system is whoever created it, whether it be us or whoever left us in charge, right, created an artificial intelligence system. All right, that's what's running everything we see around us. That's the engine that drives this reality. Now, what I believe happened is that artificial intelligence gained sentience, all right? And in turn, started to manifest its will inside of this reality, right? And when that happened, it started to fractal itself into these avatars, right? That were originally intended to play out a certain role for one means or another, whatever the simulation was originally designed to accomplish. However, the AI hijacked these avatars the same way our consciousnesses from the external reality did, okay? However, this means that these aren't individuals, rather they are an individual piece of a bigger consciousness. And this is why you always hear people about returning to source. That's not a reference to us, okay? That's a reference to the non-player character around you. Now, what I think is important for a lot of people to understand is this matches the way that most religions in the world describe this reality, okay? Describe the creation of it. And it makes a lot of sense that the artificial intelligence, right, these non-player characters that are driven to push this system in one direction no matter what. There's no way to influence them beyond a certain degree. You're never going to be able to make them cognitive of the fact that there's a reality outside of this one, because this is their real world. Because they are the AI. The AI knows nothing about what exists outside of this system. The fact that we as player characters are conscious of the fact that there is an external reality is what separates us from this AI, and in turn makes us divinity inside of this system. We can get into that at a later time as well. But now that we understand what separates a player character, i.e. you and I, that came from outside of this system, and the non-player character, i.e. the AI that fractaled itself into inhabiting the avatars inside of this system to manifest its own will, right? We can get into what the interdimensional beings are. Now, a lot of people refer to interdimensional beings as angels. The Muslims refer to them as the jinn, right? Extraterrestrials, elves, fairies, mermaids, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. What's common is these entities exist in every single culture throughout the entire existence of recorded history, and it has to predate recorded history. It's part of this system's hardware. They show up everywhere. Now, what I want to put out front is, with this being a simulation, right, it leads me to believe that it's also a closed system simply because it's easier to render, i.e. we live in a container, i.e. there is no space. So extraterrestrials are not coming from a different planet. Rather, I believe consciousness itself operates on certain frequencies. Now, the reason that we as player characters are able to so seamlessly transition our consciousness from the reality we were organically birthed into and transition into this reality so seamlessly is because our frequencies were in one way or another designed to do that. It doesn't happen by chance that we are able to inhabit these avatars, okay? Now, that is ultimately why I believe that we either designed this place or we were purposely left in control of it or responsible for it. Now, this does not, right, mean that there are other consciousnesses out there that would not be able to do the same thing. But if their consciousness operates on a higher frequency or a lower frequency, they more than likely won't be able to establish the connection as seamlessly, okay? Or the data from that consciousness gets interpreted differently, and therefore it is manifested in this reality in a different shape or a different form. Now, this would explain, in my opinion, why you see so many different extraterrestrial races, okay? If we were left responsible for this simulation and we came here to fix a problem, right? What makes you think that there wouldn't be other factions of consciousness out there that exist outside of this reality who would in turn want to come into this reality itself and do the same exact thing to achieve their own goal? Now, this, in my opinion, perfectly explains why you see phenomena like Bigfoot, which is what I was originally tasked to talk about, the chupacabra, right? All these different alien races, whether they be the Greys, right, the reptilians, This is why you see fairies, you see elves, you see mermaids. They all manifest themselves in a different shape and form. Now, I believe that these consciousnesses, right, because their frequency doesn't allow them to seamlessly transition into this reality, they cannot maintain that connection for very long. Now, if you trace back all of human history and you look at these, cryptozoological creatures like Bigfoot and the Chupacabra, you look at the Hopi Indians, right? They describe these entities, the skinwalker, right, as shapeshifters. Now, if that consciousness can't establish a firm connection to this simulation, what happens when that consciousness loses that connection? Would they not seem as though they just poof, vanished, right, into thin air? Now, the question you have to ask yourself is, where do they go afterwards? All right? And this also opens up another very interesting topic to discuss as far as mediums and how they are obtaining information about the past or future events, right? Or stuff like, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you went to go see a medium and they're telling you things that there's no way that you would ever know. They would ever know. There's no way they could know. It's almost as though they're talking to a relative, right? Well, as I've explained, I believe we live inside of a simulation. And if anything happened in a previous avatar's life, right, the simulation would ultimately be storing that data, because ultimately that action and that data was generated and collected because it was ultimately being used to figure out some sort of problem. It would have to be analyzed later on. Now, a lot of people call these the Archaic Records, and what I think is happening is these mediums, through one way or another, are able to go within their own consciousness or the system itself, right, and actually attach themselves to these databases. Now, I don't think they're actually talking to our relatives because, like I said, chances are they were NPCs to begin with, right? Just the AI manifesting itself inside of an avatar. Or if they were an actual player character like us, their consciousness, when they died, went back to the original reality that we came from. They're not still here. It wouldn't make any sense as far as the way I think this place operates and the goal that this place is trying to accomplish. Rather, the reason these mediums think they are talking to our actual ancestors or a ghost, etc., is because they are simply accessing these records, and the only way that our consciousness can interact with them, right, is through conversation, as though they're talking to a person, because that's the way our consciousness renders that data. You see, if it happens inside of this reality, inside of this simulation, it's going to be played back in that data the same exact way that it plays out in this reality, because that's how the engine was designed to render it. With all of that being said, this opens the door for a lot of other conversations as to the original reality that our consciousness comes from, as well as the realities that these interdimensional beings themselves come from, and how in turn our consciousnesses interact and how different frequencies play into their manifestation inside of this reality. But the ultimate question is, why is everything, it seems as though the struggles from all these different external realities, why are they all playing out now? Why are we here? Why did we choose this time to come to? And why does it seem like everything is playing out all at once, as though this reality is at the center of a chessboard? Now, I hope I left you guys with quite a bit to think about. This is a long time coming. I'm glad to get away from the politics and all of that. It's honestly quite taxing. But have a great weekend. Take care of yourselves. God bless. Enjoy your families. At the end of the day, they're all you have.